Well, it's the third round of Premier League matches within a week, and all of the title contenders will be put to the test this weekend. Leaders Arsenal head to Aston Villa in Saturday's early kick-off before Chelsea travel to Bournemouth and Manchester City play host to high-flying Sunderland. The gap at the foot of the table is starting to widen. Can the bottom three pick up big results in the battle to avoid the drop? We've got it all covered on this week's Assist. Warm welcome along to the Assist in association with freesupertips.com, your home for daily football hackers and bet builders. I'm Warren Ashurst, and I'm joined this week by Dan Charles and James Mason to discuss their thoughts and tips on both the Premier League, the EFL and the FA Cup, of course, this week as well. And don't forget, you can interact with us and give us your thoughts on the Racing Post YouTube channel. As Ian Johnson, one of our regular viewers, has done so, he's been involved in a last man standing competition. And after last weekend, he got through to round 14 after an incredible finish at Brentford, he said, which saw him go through. Only got 7 teams less to choose from, though. Very difficult as they get down to the nitty-gritty of last man standing. And another regular, Andy Turner, has also been in touch with us as well on the YouTube channel, saying, having opposed Bristol Rovers many times this season, an experienced Notts County side looked overpriced to him last week. County do have the odd wobble, but go and draw no bet, he said, against Bristol Rovers at the Memorial Ground. And it was, of course, Notts County, despite being down to 10 men, who picked up the 3 points in that game. Well, more on the EFL and the FA Cup in a bit, but we're going to start off, as ever, by looking ahead to the Premier League action this week. And in order of priority, in terms of the games, we have to start at Villa Park. Aston Villa against Arsenal is the 12:30 kickoff on Saturday. As far as the prices are concerned, well, Villa are 100 to 30 to claim the win, Arsenal 9 to 10, and the draw 5 to 2. Dan, we'll start with you with this one, and I suppose the first question we have to ask is the title Arsenal's now after what's happened in midweek?
Can I give a slightly complicated answer? If I was forced to say yes or no, I would say they're more likely to win the title than Man City. I think it's a two-horse race. I think it's Arsenal or Manchester City. However, looking at the prices, they're 4 to 9. Arsenal, City about 3 to 1. I would say Arsenal should be nearer 4 to 6 and City near around 2 to 1. I think City have got a better chance than the markets are suggesting. If I was forced to give an answer, I'd go with Arsenal. I mean, the reason for that is that Arsenal are generally tougher to beat in games because they've got a very, very solid defence. City rely a hell of a lot on Haaland. You know, what would happen if he did get an injury? But I do think it could go either way at the two sides.
Putting you on the spot as well, James. Arsenal's title for you?
I think no. I think Manchester City. I just feel with Arsenal, I think both teams, it's down to injuries. Like Dan was saying there, Forlan gets an injury for City. What are they going to do? You know, they could go and buy someone in January if he gets injured now. But Arsenal, I think it's defensively, I think, where for me are the worries for them, because we've seen in recent games, you lose Gabriel, you lose Saliba, and I think the 2 replacements for them in Nketiah and Mosquera aren't quite at the level of those two. So I think if there's any big injury, like a long injury to one of their key centre-backs, then I think maybe they could wilt a little bit and the pressure could get to them. So I think City, with the price as well that Dan was saying, offer a bit of value.
Okay, well, maybe not the confidence that most people would say at the moment in terms of the title battle. And of course, Dan, this is going to be a big test for Arsenal this weekend in the early kickoff. I mean, I've seen a few Villa fans saying that they feel it's outrageous that they're not being talked about as potential title rivals to Arsenal. And if ever they could put down a marker, it's going to be on Saturday.
Yeah, well, Villa are in the Chelsea position, aren't they, from last week? They're 6 points behind Arsenal going into a home game against them. So it's another match where the kind of the narrative could change based on the result. I mean, Villa win, suddenly they go to within 3 points, and you know it would be hard to completely rule them out. I still think that Villa over 38 games are not a strong enough side or squad to win the title. There, I've said it, but I think for this game, Mikel Arteta's getting a little bit irritated at the moment, isn't he? He's moaned about the early, having to play the early kickoff after the Brentford game. Couple of injuries that look like they were picked up in the Brentford game as well. Mosquera going off before half-time. Declan Rice went off towards the end as well. It sounds like he's picked up a bit of a calf injury. You've still got, as was mentioned earlier, issues over Gabriel. Will Saliba be fit? It sounds like he's a big doubt as well for the weekend. So, when you take all that into account, I certainly wouldn't be looking to back Arsenal at odds on. My worry about siding with Villa, I'm very tempted to get with Villa on maybe on a double chance or something, or even a draw no bet. But I'm going to go with a draw. And for this reason, I just think that Villa's game at Brighton, to come back from 2-0 down on a Wednesday night to win that 4-3, they really had to put a lot into that and dig deep. I know a couple of players are rested. Tielemans only come on as a sub, but I think a lot of players have had to put a lot in that game. Arsenal, although they picked a couple of injuries up, did rest quite a few players as well. People like Saka are only coming off the bench. So I just think energy-wise, they may have a little bit more energy, and that will help them in this is a really tough fixture for them. I mean, Villa have won 8 home wins in a row across all competitions, 8 wins out of 9 in the last, in the last 9 Premier League games. But Arsenal, 18 games unbeaten in all comps. So a very difficult game to call. Going to go with a draw.
Okay, well, I know that Villa had that blow of Emi Martinez pulling out late for the clash with Brighton in midweek. I wonder whether he'll be fit to face the Gunners on Saturday. I mean, my instant reaction, James, I read out the prices was, I thought that was quite a big price for Villa.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it is a big price for Villa. For Arsenal, it's such a huge match for them coming into this. Just for the fact if they drop points, even if they get a draw and City win, you still that gap is being closed more and more game after game, and then the pressure starts to come on the Gunners. And can they continue to churn out these performances? They have done it so far, but sort of a caveat really is their away form hasn't looked as assured of late, has it? They've drawn their last 2 against Sunderland, and that's no bad result. But again, it's a team they probably would have expected to go and get the win. And then it was the draw against 10-man Chelsea for me. I watched the game. I thought Chelsea looked better than Arsenal. I thought Arsenal created a few openings, but I just thought the Blues looked, even when they're down to 10 men, that they could have gone and get the victory. And then you mentioned the injuries as well that Arsenal have got. Gabriel, doubts over Saliba. We were saying there about Mosquera. And everyone said Arsenal have got great strength and depth this season. They've got 2 players in most positions. But now it's that second player coming into these positions, having not played much, and saying, right, go in there against this Villa side, who were fantastic at home, as Dan was saying there. They're going for a 9th win in a row at home in all competitions. They're unbeaten at Villa Park this season. I was really tempted to put Villa up to get the win, but there's just that little niggling fact of how difficult Arsenal have been to beat, and the fact that they are still churning out results. I'm going to go for the Villa or draw double chance. I think that gives you a little bit of protection with the fact that Arsenal could potentially go and create something out of nothing. They've got the players to do that, but Villa very, very strong at home.
Okay, well, the other team, of course, chasing Arsenal hard, are Manchester City, and they play host to Sunderland on Saturday afternoon. That game kicks off at 3 p.m. with City 4-1 on to claim the victory here. It's 9-1 Sunderland and 11-2 the draw. James, we'll start with you with this one. I mean, City were involved in the game of the week, really, weren't they? That 5-4 thriller against Fulham, and as impressive as they were in the early stages of that game, to then nearly throw it away late on, there will be some concerns amongst City fans that things aren't quite as solid as they maybe hope they would be at this stage.
Yeah, maybe not watertight at the back, but City have never massively been watertight. They've always given up opportunities, even in their title-winning season. They've given up opportunities for teams to score against them. It's just either teams haven't taken them, or they've had a fantastic saves or good blocks coming in. So the fact that it was 5-4, the scoreline for me flattered Fulham though. City have just gone 5-1 ahead and then have just completely shut off. They've thought, yeah, we've got this. And then Fulham have got another one, another, and then it's panic stations. They've still managed to hold out for the win. The big thing as well was that Haaland scored for City, got an assist as well. So he's sort of, not that he dropped out of form, but he's back in amongst the goals for them. This will be a tough test for them. I mean, Sunderland, they've been the surprise package of the season so far. You look at some of the results they've had on Wednesday evening, drawing at Liverpool. There's added to draws they've had against Arsenal, against Villa, against Crystal Palace. These are all teams that are doing really well at the moment, barring the Reds. They've also recorded a win over Chelsea as well. So they are a tough nut to crack. And I think no matter what happens now for the end of the season, they won't go down. I think Reggie Bree probably will be up there as a contender for manager of the season, because he's done an absolutely superb job.
He has.
They don't care about reputation, Sunderland. They make it difficult. Their away form, that's what concerns me going into this game, though, as they go to the Etihad. They've lost 3, won 2, and drawn 2 away from home this season. So it's been a little inconsistent. They've never won at the Etihad either. They've lost 10 and drawn 2. So that's a big concern. But sort of the factor I look at is they've scored in each of the last 5 trips to the Etihad, and they've actually been not bad coming forward this season. So I'm thinking a Man City to win here and both teams to score is where I'm looking at. We mentioned there City almost blew the 5-1 lead, but still won 5-4, still scoring 5 goals. 4th game in a row that City have conceded at least twice. So again, not strong defensively, so it gives Sunderland that hope that they can get at least a goal from this game. But City at home, they're just dominant. They've won 6, they've lost 1 at home in the league this season, and they've scored 19 goals. It's the most of any side in the division. I do fear a little bit for Sunderland, but I think they can get on a score sheet. So City to win and both teams to score.
I think James makes a valid point about Regis Lebris there and the job that he's done, Dan. Maybe he hasn't got the credit so far that he deserves, because not only have Sunderland been impressive, but he has actually just tweaked his formation, his style on occasions as well to try and combat the team. And again, particularly against Liverpool in midweek, they were very, very impressive defensively.
They were. I mean, this goes back to last season. And I'm thinking back to the playoff semi-final, when they were out of form going into it against Coventry. Nobody really fancied them in the playoffs, but again, tactically they were so well set up, and they and came through it in good style, and then went on to win the playoff final when they weren't fancied. He's tactically a very, very astute manager. They've recruited really well, and every time you watch them, you almost get more impressed every time you see them, and you realise that this isn't a flash in the pan. So only lose 3 games out of 14 as a newly promoted team is a hell of an effort. However, I think the timing of this fixture works against them. To have to go to Liverpool and then go to City, Wednesday to Saturday, that is a hell of an ask for any side. They're going to have had they would have had to work really, really hard for what they got at Liverpool and have a great result. I just wonder if they're going to run out of gas and intensity in this one. City, I think, will probably look to tighten up a little bit after the last 2 games. Pep Guardiola's not stupid. I know they're not like defensively anywhere near as good as Arsenal, but I think he will look to close the door a little bit more at the back, and I can see them winning in a not in a high scoring game, but fairly comfortably. So I'm going to go with City to win and under 4.5 goals.
Okay. Well, Chelsea have slipped to 4th in the table after their midweek defeat at the hands of Leeds at Ellen Road. And up next for them is a trip to the south coast to take on Bournemouth on Saturday afternoon, and a bit of travelling back and forward up and down the country for Enzo Maresca's men. Bournemouth are 9-4 to claim the win on Saturday. Chelsea are 23-20 and the draw 11-4. Where are we at with Chelsea at the moment, Dan? I mean, I'm asking you this, and I don't even think Enzo Maresca could probably answer it in terms of, where they're at and how far down the path they are. But just when you think, they get that result against Arsenal, they're putting a few results together, a hiccup along the way again, and it seems to happen quite regularly.
Yeah, I mean, they played very well against Arsenal, especially under the circumstances. Clearly, Caicedo deserved to be sent off, but the other players reacted really well. And and got as James said there, they got the draw and could have even maybe nicked the win. But I said before last week I didn't see them as big title challengers. I stick by that view, and that's because there's always a performance like we saw the one at Leeds in them too regularly, and they were really poor at Leeds. Showed a little bit of reaction start of the second half, but then far too many errors, lost out in the duels, and Leeds. With their switch to 2 up front, just caused them lots and lots of problems, and were worthy winners. So that's a worry. That said, I fancy Chelsea to bounce back here and win this game. Been pretty good at recovering from setbacks, through the seasons. Cole Palmer came on in the match at Leeds, missed a really good chance soon after coming on, but he's going to be a big boost for Chelsea. You got other players that didn't start, like Pedro Neto, going to be a little bit fresher for not starting the game midweek. Bournemouth, on the other hand, they're looking really stretched at the moment. Tyler Adams got his 5th booking in the loss 1-0 at home to Everton, so he's going to be suspended. Big player for them, energy-wise in midfield, as it was their energy against Everton. I watched quite a lot of that game. They were really lacking energy. Only had 5 shots during the game. Very un-Bournemouth-like performance, if you like. Everton were comfortable winners, really, despite the goal coming late. So They were second at the end of at the start of November. Bournemouth. Now they're down to 14th and looking over their shoulder a little bit. I think it's a good time to play them. Chelsea to win. Great price odds against.
Yeah, I'd have to say, we mentioned last week on the assist that Bournemouth, maybe we're asking too much of them or expecting too much for them after the start of the season they've made. The wheels are falling off a little bit, James, at the moment. And this is where it's highlighted in terms of squad strength when you have so many games in such a short space of time.
Yeah, that's the issue, isn't it? It's having to chop and change as a team that maybe doesn't have the same strength and depth of, your title contenders, your Arsenals, your Manchester Cities, and Bournemouth at the moment don't seem to have that. Obviously, there was Antoine Semenyo, they were missing for a couple of games as well. That was illness, ankle. There was other rumours going on about him when he's away on international duty. So it's just having to rely, and I think for Bournemouth, some young players stepping in and trying to fill the void of players is a croupier up front for them who is done fantastically, but maybe a bit too much has been asked of him, this early on in his career. I mean, it's so hard, like we said there, to figure out Bournemouth, but it's so hard to figure out Chelsea as well. They can be red hot one game and then ice cold the next. And you sort of allude to a little bit, is it too much rotation for Chelsea? Does Maresca need to settle on a starting level as much as he can? I think it's the latter. I think you rotate too much. I think you especially need sort of a back line that is, steady. You know what you're going to get week in, week out from every match. But if you chop and change there and then you think to yourself, well, I'll drop Neto for this game and I'll give Gittins a chance. And this is it. It's maybe an embarrassment of riches for Chelsea in attack especially, and it's too much. So Maresca thinks, I need to try and please everybody. So he's not getting that stability from his team and just that cohesion. So maybe that's why he turns in they turn in some disappointing performances at times. I could easily see Chelsea going and win this game. I could easily, on the other hand, though, say Bournemouth going and win it and getting out what is a real slump in form at the moment. So I think what we are going to get is a very entertaining game. I think both teams will play on the front foot, attack-minded football. I'm going over 3.5 goals is the selection for this one. I just think given the inconsistencies of both, I can't go from a match winner. But you look at the goals that these two, or the matches these two teams have been involved in this season, goals have been a steady flow. So Bournemouth, 7 of their last 9 games have had over 3.5. Chelsea, 3 of the last 5 away games in all comps have had over 3.5. So they're creating opportunities, they're taking them, but they also haven't looked good at the back, both of these sides. So for me, both managers, Maresca and Areola, will be wanting a response. They'll be wanting to hit back. And, they played a 2-2 when they met in January at Stamford Bridge the last time these two went up against each other. So I think goals is probably the option here.
Well, big game for both teams to get back on the winning path. Who will come out on top, we shall see. 5:30 on Saturday is next for us, and it's Ellen Road, the venue for Leeds against Liverpool. Leeds 29-10 to claim what will be a big win here. Liverpool 5-6, and the draw 3-1. And bearing in mind what happened in midweek, James, first look at the prices, I was quite surprised to see that Liverpool were odds on.
Yeah, and again, I just think that is potentially warning against Liverpool being a big side, that they will come good at some point. Everybody's expecting them to put a run of form together. They're not doing it at the moment. It seems like it's half a step forward, not even a full step forward at the minute. It's half a step forward and about 3 back for Liverpool. It's ridiculous, really, how much they've dropped off from the title-winning campaign of last season. And the worrying thing is the 1-1 draw at home to Sunderland, it didn't really come as a shock. Usually, if you can't watch the game, you'd be checking the scores on your phone and you see Sunderland are 1-0 up at Anfield and you go, wow, I didn't expect that. But I don't think anyone was that surprised. Fair enough, they ended up getting a draw in the end, but Arne Slot is under huge pressure at the moment. 9 defeats in the last 14 in all comps. Something is not clicking. And for me personally, I think the insistence to keep playing Alexander Isak is working massively against the Reds. For some reason, Slot can't see that he's not hitting the mark, and he's only himself to blame for that at the moment. This is Isak because he missed pre-season with how he got his move from Newcastle. He hasn't got up to speed. You have to drop him and change tact. And whether that's going with Ekitike up front, who I think should be, because he's been in fantastic form since he arrived at Anfield this summer, or if you don't want Ekitike there, try Salah through the middle, try Chiesa through the middle. But I think Isak is the issue for me because he's not clicking with all the other players around him. The worry for Liverpool now for me is they head to a Leeds side who are on that huge high after beating Chelsea 3-1 on Wednesday at Ellen Road, a much needed win. And the place will be absolutely rocking on Saturday. It really, really will. It will be a hostile environment for this Liverpool side who are already shown that they will wilt this season. You know, Leeds have won 2 of the last 3 at home, and they take on this Liverpool team who have lost 4 of the last 5 away matches in the league. I think the value here is going with the Leeds win.
I have to say, I do think the team news could be significant here. Liverpool are hoping that maybe Conor Bradley will be back to play a part in the game at Ellen Road. His appearance could be crucial in terms of a result here. I mean, I tend to agree with James on the Liverpool front, Dan, in terms of Alexander Isak's performances and not yet being at match fitness. And I just think that I can understand Arne Slot sticking with him after he scored against West Ham. It's almost like he had to start him again. But, you know, he's almost trying to work around things so much as a Liverpool manager at the moment. And, you know, that first and foremost, you just have to get the results, whichever way it is. It might not be the way that you want to play your football, but that ultimately has to be the target.
Yeah, I mean, Isak is an issue, but I think it's almost like he's playing whack-a-mole at the moment, isn't it? With Arne Slot, because there's problems that popping up all over the pitch. You've got, there's been an issue with Salah's performances, dropped off a cliff since the start of the season. Verts, for some reason, he seems reluctant to put him in his right position, in the number 10 position regularly enough. He appeared there for moments against Sunderland, looked decent, and for other periods he's chucked back out on the left again, where he hasn't got the pace to get his fullback. So no, I just think there's defensively as well, as they don't look as strong as they once were. But I'm going to look. We talked a lot about Liverpool. Let's give Leeds a little bit of credit here as well. Daniel Farke takes a lot of stick, but they're on course to stay up at the moment. They're averaging a point per game, which is not too bad for a newly promoted team. I think sometimes the way Sunderland are doing it, it almost puts more pressure on the other newly promoted teams. But they're on course at the moment to survive. Their home form is really good. Got 11 points at Ellen Road, where you're kind of looking to get most of your points. And tactically, he changes it up. He's had a load of stick. Farke changes it up against Chelsea, goes with a back 3, a front 2, and it works a treat, and they get a fully deserved win. So I just think he takes a lot of unnecessary stick and deserves a little bit more credit. I think the crowd are back believing in the side again. Now you can see that watching the game against Chelsea. They were right behind them, helping the team on. That's going to be a big factor as well here against Liverpool, who look vulnerable. And I'm going to go with Liverpool. I think Liverpool are way too short here, so I'm going to go with Leeds or draw, double chance.
Okay, well, fascinating game to come at Ellen Road on Saturday evening. We're going to turn our attentions now to Monday night. Molineux is the venue for Wolves against Manchester United for an 8 o'clock kickoff. Wolves are 16-5 to claim their first win of the season in this game. It's 3-4 Manchester United, and the draw is 3-1. I'm not sure what else we can say about Wolves, Dan, at the moment. I mean, we've said it before. They're not, I don't think they're as bad a team necessarily as the 2 points that they've got suggest at the moment, but they're at such a low ebb of confidence, you just can't see where this win's going to come from.
Yeah, they're not as bad as that points tally suggests, but I just think if anything was going to happen in terms of staying up, it had to happen in these first 3 games under Rob Edwards. To get no points and 0 goals in these first 3 games, that you kind of looked at them and they weren't easy games, but there was potential in them. Even the Villa away one, you're playing Villa after they played on a Thursday in the Europa, so there's a chance there to get something. They've lost that narrowly, lost again narrowly against Nottingham Forest in the week. I watched actually quite a bit of that game. God knows why, because it was one of the least fascinating games to watch. But I did watch quite a bit of it, and Wolves just looked like you've just said there, Warren. They look a team completely confidence shot at the moment, and there's a lack of quality as well. Strand Larsen, who they turned down some big bids for him in the summer, he's not looked effective at all, and any threat at all. And Man United, for all of their, they're up and down a little bit, aren't they? But I think there is a bit of progress going on there. And we're talking before their game against West Ham, but apparently Matheus Cunha is back now and ready to be part of the squad. That's a massive plus for them. And although they've not been wonderful away from home, they did come from behind at Palace in the last away game, got a good 2-1 win there. I just think the way Wolves are playing at the moment, I'll take Man United at a shade of odds on to win the game. United to win.
Be interesting to see what reaction Cunha gets from the Wolves fans if he's involved in that return to Molineux on Monday. I mean, Manchester United, probably in contrast, James, to Wolves, are not necessarily playing at the best at the moment, but things are starting to work out for them a little bit more, which is probably a sign of maybe they weren't as bad when they were losing games, and now actually they're not necessarily playing brilliantly, but like that fight back against Crystal Palace, they've got a bit of something about them.
Yeah, consistently inconsistent, I think, is United. I think that's just how they have been under Ruben Amorim as well. I'm not quite sure they're at the stage really at the moment where you can have the utmost confidence in them going and getting the win. I still don't think this formation, how they set up under Amorim, is working for them. I still don't think they've got the personnel to have three centre backs in there. The wing backs okay. But I think the three centre backs, you sometimes shoving Luke Shaw into there. You've got Harry Maguire, who you'd say is probably past his best, but those two players probably weren't meant to be in there, but it's just necessity really that they're in there now. Yoro's not doing what he needs to. De Ligt, I don't think is at the level he was years ago. So for me, I think Cameron, I think it's either he bites the bullet and goes at some point because I don't think he's going to change his formation, or he gets given the money to bring in the personnel to try and improve his defensive options, and then it all starts clicking. Which one of those comes first? I'm not too sure, but I think Manchester United fans will be hoping there's a little bit of progress. I do think they should have enough to get the win. I mean, the Championship is absolutely calling for Wolves, isn't it? Dan said there, no win in Edwards' first three games, yet to score. In fact, they didn't score in the whole of November, Wolves. It was that bad for them. It's 8 defeats in a row. You just wonder, really, is Edwards going to see out the season? Did he
Well,
potentially?
I do think the appointment, James, was probably with one eye on next season. They probably thought he's managed in the Championship before. He's done a good job, of course, with Luton. There's a chance there that he might have the whereabouts in terms of getting Wolves back into the top flight, but it's a very risky appointment if that's the case.
But it is a risky appointment. I mean, Edwards couldn't turn it down. He's gone to Wolves, who bottom. He's left Middlesbrough, who would challenge him for promotion, and those two could just switch places for the next campaign. So it was a big call made by him. But yeah, it depends. They might have said to him, right, if we go down, that's fine. We'll give you a bit of money to spend in the Championship. But then the owners might think, gosh, there's been absolutely no improvement, no upturn in form here. The goals are lacking. We'll get rid of you in March when we know we're down or something like that. But for this game anyway, I think it'll be an attritional watch. I don't think it'll be a fantastic game to watch this one. I think United will win, but going for under 2.5 goals here, I think it will be scrappy. United have been hit and miss on the road, so I think that's the inconsistency they've shown is when they're away from Old Trafford. And you look at this bet as well, under 2.5. It's landed in all of Edwards' 3 games in charge. And in 7 of the last 8 meetings, it is also coming as well. So it's not a fixture that produces a lot of goals.
No, and it'll be interesting to see how Wolves respond on Monday evening. We're going to take on the remaining 5 Premier League matches now, and we'll start off with a clash at the Amex Stadium at 2 o'clock on Sunday as Brighton play host to West Ham. Brighton 11-20. It's 100-30 the draw, and the Hammers are 19-4. Brighton were unbeaten at home. I was amazed to see before that game against Aston Villa in midweek. I just wonder how they'll react to that major disappointment.
Yeah, it's a strange one with Brighton, isn't it? They're such a good team to watch, but even Brighton over the years as well, with the managers they've brought in, they've still managed to keep that same process, that philosophy of, playing good attack-minded football, but neither of the bosses have been able to really shore them up at the back. I mean, it was like you said, a frantic 4-3 defeat to Villa. You look at the team that's coming now to the Amex Stadium in West Ham. Nuno has made them more threatening in recent weeks, but they are still making errors at the back, and that is an issue, especially against this Brighton side who like to play on the front foot. They will relish the chance to bang in a few goals. The loss to Villa, as you mentioned there, was their first at home this season, so they've been strong at the Amex. They've beaten the likes of Manchester City and Newcastle, 2 very strong teams. And for me, West Ham have just struggle to find the right balance, especially away from home. I just can't see them having enough going forward to outscore Brighton. I think it'll be a high-scoring game, but I think when you look at the attacking weapons both of these teams have, Brighton have more. So I think the sort of, maybe not Valley, but I think Brighton to win is the selection here.
And at West Ham, I was a little bit disappointed with against Liverpool, I'll be honest, because we've talked about the problems that Liverpool have had, and they were very sort of passive and didn't almost believe that they could go on and win that game. Now, you mentioned earlier on about how good Leeds' home form has been and how that could be crucial. I fear for West Ham because their home form has been as poor as it has. It almost puts more pressure on these away games for them to try and pick up points.
Yeah, I think in that game, funny enough, against Liverpool, if they'd have run into the Liverpool that were sticking to their kind of guns of just, attacking teams and Salah playing and his lack of tracking back, I think that would have suited West Ham more. They could just sort of sit, because they do, Nuno's teams do like to sit in a low block and then counter. You got Jared Bowen's pace, Somerville when he's fit as well. And I think that would have suited West Ham more. But I think they're a bit unlucky that they ran into Liverpool and they kind of went back to basics a little bit, and that didn't really give West Ham the space so much to hit them on the break in behind. So you look previous 3 games, they took 7 points. The Liverpool game, they were kind of in it until late on, weren't they? 1-0, and then Liverpool get the. I'm not saying they deserved anything out of it, they didn't, but I do think they have improved under Nuno. He's picked up a couple of decent away draws as well. Away to Everton, the 1-1 that I watched, they were pretty decent in that. The 2-2 at Bournemouth, where they led 2-0. And I think the draw here at 130, you mentioned there, Warren, that looks overpriced to me. I think Brighton are having a decent season. I mean, they could have gone third if they'd have held on to that lead against Villa. Now they've dropped to 7th, could drop to 8th if Man United beat West Ham on the Thursday. I think that's more realistic of where they're at. And to try and recover from that blow, being 2 up and losing 4-3 next game, I don't think it's necessarily straightforward. So against an improving West Ham team, I think the draw's just a little bit overpriced.
We're going to head back to Saturday again now for another 3 o'clock kickoffs at St James's Park, where Newcastle play host to Burnley. The hosts are 2-7 to claim the win here. It's 17-2 Burnley and 5-1 the draw. In terms of Burnley, Dan, it seems to be a bit of a stuck record for us at the moment. They're in games all the time, but they just can't get over the line. And more often than not, they're losing matches. And it's a poor signal at this time of the year when you just can't pick up points.
Yeah, I think it's just a bit of a lack of quality, really. I mean, Burnley, you probably in comparison to other teams, newly promoted teams in recent years, to where they are is not kind of out of the ordinary. They've got 10 points from 14 games. That's kind of on a level even maybe slightly better than some of the newly promoted teams that have come up recently, because Sunderland, now Leeds are looking quite decent. It's making them look, that they haven't recruited well enough. Lost 5 on the bounce. That's never a good look, and then bad for confidence. And given the run that they're on, to already be 4 points from safety, that feels like a big gap already for them. Newcastle are, because of the sort of slow start they had in the business over Isak in the summer, they've kind of been playing catch up, haven't they, for a while? Still stuck in the lower mid part of the table. Played very well against Spurs for 70 minutes. Deservedly took the lead and then paid the price for a poor last 20 minutes. But I think they're generally strong at home. They should bounce back here. I don't think it'll be a hammering. I mean, Burnley in their loss to Palace in the week, they only gave up 3 shots. So and maybe Burnley getting a little bit of their solidity back. So I don't think they'll get hammered, but Newcastle to win. Newcastle to win, and under 3.5 goals is odds against. That looks a bet to me.
Yeah, James, you've got more than a small interest in this game. And I wanted to ask you about Newcastle, because obviously a lot of the concerns with Isak going was where the goals were going to come from. But having watched a bit of that game with Tottenham in midweek, I think Newcastle look great going forward. I think at the back now, they seem to have, lost that solidity maybe they had previously.
Yeah, it's a strange one, really. I think it took a little bit of time for Newcastle to get up to speed offensively. I mean, Nick Woltemada's come in and he's done a very, very good job. He's hit the ground running, but it was a completely different way of attacking with Woltemada leading the line as it was with Isak leading the line. Because although Woltemada chases, he doesn't make that run, through the defence. The ball's over the top. He doesn't chase them down as often, and he doesn't have the pace to do that. He doesn't scare the defences. Isak, when he was there, the defences would sit deeper because they knew his pace, and then it would just invite a bit more pressure on. So Baltimore certainly is a different kind of forward that they have. It's more getting it out to the wings and trying to get balls into the box. But, it's the classic, he's got a good touch for a big man, but he does. He links the play up very, very well. So I think it's just taken time, and Newcastle are showing now that they've maybe got a bit more cohesion in that. You do look at some of the other signings. Alanga's not really hit the ground running yet either. He's not sort of replicated the form that he showed at Nottingham Forest. I think that's probably a blow. Johan Vissa hasn't played yet. So there are other players in there you think that they can get up to speed offensively more. The Tottenham game, yeah, it was defensively. They were twice pegged back, 1-0 up, 2-1 up through you'd say a controversial penalty. You don't see a lot of those given, but actually it's quite nice to see them given sometimes because Bentancur had no eyes on the ball. He was just grappling Dan Burn. And then it's like, well, you've got to look at the ball. You've got to make some effort to try and at least defend the ball when it comes towards you instead of just rugby tackling your opponent. But
I'm not sure Dan would agree with you, James, I'll be honest, but I can see where your
justice was
point
done
is.
there, Warren. Yeah, justice was done. Yeah.
But then he shinned there. Then Romero shinned one into the net with an overhead kick. It's unbelievable. But yeah, for Newcastle, it was two bad goals to concede. The first one was a good header from Romero against Spurs, but Dan Burn lost his marker. And how you centre back and Romero has been able to have that space in the box is anyone's answer really. And then you look at the second goal, the shinner, but it should have been cleared away before it even started bouncing towards Ramsdale. Burn probably should have got a leg to it. It's just everyone watched it go past and into the corner. And that, for me, I think Eddie Howe and the staff will be absolutely furious with the defending in that last 20 minutes. So they will be nailed on, right, we want a clean sheet in this game against Burnley. And I think that's where I'm going with it in terms of Newcastle to win to 0. They've been very good at home, Newcastle, and beaten in 7 at home in all comps. They were going for a 7th win in a row against Spurs, didn't happen, but I think they'll get that winning feeling back. I think all of the team will be desperate to make sure they get the 3 points. And I think as well, Bruno Guimaraes, who came on at half-time against Spurs, he'll be starting. And just the actual pivotal nature he plays for this Newcastle team, he just makes everything tick. When he is on there, on the pitch, Newcastle just look a whole different team. He skippers them. Excellent player. Obviously, scoring that goal was impressive as well. So I just think Burnley, for me, you mentioned there, they're struggling, lost 5 on the spin. They haven't scored at St James's Park in 4 of the last 5 league trips as well. So it's not been a happy hunting ground for them. And I just think Newcastle will be so intent on getting a clean sheet and putting a couple of goals past Burnley. I don't think it'll be anything massive because obviously Newcastle have got their eye on Champions League fixture next midweek. So I think a Newcastle to win to 0. If you were going to correct score, probably like a 2-3-0.
Okay, well, up next is another Saturday 3:00 kickoff, and this looks like the hardest game to call for me at the weekend as Everton play host to Nottingham Forest at the Hill Dickinson Stadium. Everton 23-20, 11-5 the draw, and 13-5 Forest. I mean, how you go from being thumped as badly as they were at home by Newcastle out of the blue, really, for Everton, off the back of a win at Old Trafford, and then you go and win at Bournemouth. I mean, it's difficult to call where Everton are at the moment, but they would hope for a response on the home ground, James.
Yeah, they would hope for a response, but like you said, it's very hard to predict what this game will be in terms of a match winner. Everton very up and down. Forest have actually been pretty steady, haven't they, since Sean Dyche was appointed. He's made them much more resolute at the back. 5 clean sheets since he took charge. So, he's come in, Dyche, and he's gone, right, this is the issue here. We need to shore up at the back, and then things will start to come. And they have. He's managed to get the team moving up the table away from the relegation zone. You look at David Moyes, though, with his Everton side, they've also been strong at the back. They've conceded just 17 times. So again, they're a team that's built from back to front. But at the other end of the pitch, just 15 goals scored shows the issues they have. And for me, Everton, for however many seasons now, it's always been they need a centre forward in there and a goal scoring one. They've tried it with Tieno Barry coming in. He still hasn't opened his account. Beto's only scored 2 goals in all competitions this season. The goals are drying up and it's a real problem. And that's when maybe at the start of the campaign, Grealish had a good start. So he was scoring a few goals and Dewsbury Hall was maybe chipping in and Charlie Alcaraz coming in as well. But when the players behind them, the midfielders don't chip in with goals, then there's even more emphasis put on the lack of goals from the mainline strikers. And yeah, I think goal mouth action for me in this one will be limited. Under 2.5 is the way I'm going to go for this one. It's been a winning bet in 4 of Everton's last 5 games, 4 of Forest's last 5 away matches. So yeah, I just can't see with how these two teams are playing and how sort of both managers favour defence over attack that we're going to get any kind of, enthralling fixture at the Hill Dickinson Stadium.
And I think probably, Dan, as well, as James sort of mentioned there, they wouldn't be too against a draw through these two sides. I mean, Everton are slap bang in the middle of the table as things stand. Another point for Forest would move them further away from the bottom three. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, I think it'll be tight, but I'm going to pick a side and just take the draw out of the equation. The Forest on the draw no bet odds against, I think, is a bit of value. I think Everton are. I quite like them as a starting 11. I think they've got some nice quality in there now with Grealish, Dewsbury Hall, and Jai. There's an issue obviously at centre forward. Neither of the centre forwards convinces. But they've got quite a nice bit of flair and quality in behind that, and some strength through the defensive sort of spine of the team. But their squad is the issue. You look when they get a couple of injuries, they seem to have quite a few like academy youngsters on the bench. This game, the reason I'm going for Forest is because you've got two absences in the middle of the park. Drissa Gay's still suspended. Heroic Boonham came in for him, then he got his 5th yellow card, so he's suspended as well now. So you're scraping the barrel now at the moment to get a competitive midfield out. And Forest, as much as I thought Wolves were ordinary in the game midweek, I thought Forest handled the game really well. Were quite comfortable. Got a deserved win. That's 2 away wins in a row now for Forest. One at Liverpool the game before, and their confidence is rising. I just think Forest on the draw no bet. They're the likelier winners. Back that odds against.
Yeah, you do think the likes of Elliot Anderson in midfield and those Everton players missing, that Forest might well take advantage. 2 more games to look forward to in the Premier League, starting at Craven Cottage, where Fulham play host to Crystal Palace Sunday at 4:30. Fulham 31-20, Palace 9-5, and the draw 23-10. I don't think I've ever seen an atmosphere at Craven Cottage like I saw in the last 10 or 15 minutes of that game in midweek, Dan. They've obviously got to try and reenact that against Palace now, and it's maybe a little bit after the Lord Mayor's show.
Yeah, I think the Fulham they often get sort of team people bringing them in as possible relegation candidates. I mean, they're actually they're only like 2 points at the moment behind the likes of Bournemouth and Brentford that have been getting a lot of praise this season. So I think Fulham are 1 win or a couple of wins away from the narrative of their season changing. They've before the City game, which was a bonkers game, they had 2 really good performances. Dominant 1-0 win at home to Sunderland. They scored late, but they absolutely dominated on the stats. A really good win away at Spurs. So they're picking up a little bit, starting to score a few goals, which was an issue for them earlier in the season. I think conceding 5 is going to be a bit of an outlier. A lot of that is just City's quality. The City's XG was 2.2 and they've scored 5 goals. So it's not as if Fulham are were completely cut open. They actually won the shot count, Fulham, in that game, 12-11. So I think Fulham are improving, and I think it's a great time for them to play Palace. I see some tiredness in Palace at the moment, which is understandable with the kind of smallish squad, the workload that they've got at the moment. The game against United, they started it well and then kind of fell away, especially after Ismaila Sarr went off injured. They're not got tons of options in the attacking positions. They kind of Man United won that game. Then the Burnley game, they've nicked a 1-0, as I mentioned earlier, with only 3 shots in the entire game. Then they've got another game hot on the heels to come again. Tough game away to Fulham. I just think with the lack of attacking options and the fatigue that's starting to show, I think, for Palace, I'm going to go with Fulham here. Tight game, but I'm going to go Fulham draw no bet.
Okay, I think you fancy Palace, James. Is that right?
Yeah, I've gone exactly the other way for this one here. I mean, Fulham, fair credit to them. They nearly pulled off that spectacular, didn't they, on Tuesday against Manchester City? But they now host a Palace side. I understand Dan's points there in terms of maybe a bit of fatigue in the Palace side, but they still continue to churn out results. Grounding out the 1-0 win at Burnley. I mean, Burnley's not an easy place to go. That's where the Clarets would expect to pick up, the majority of their points this season. And Palace have got 13 points away from home. Only Spurs and Arsenal have got more to their names in the Premier League this season. They're on 14. So it just shows that maybe their style on the road is better than it is at Selhurst Park, potentially, in terms of, they're happy for teams to try and come onto them a bit, and then they hit them on the break with the pace that they have in their team. So I think that could benefit the Eagles. They've enjoyed their trips to Craven Cottage as well. They haven't lost here since 2005. They've had 7 trips since then, won 4 and drawn 3. It's not really an away fixture that strikes fear into them. And I just think there's maybe a little bit of extra quality in this Palace side that they can chalk up another 3 points.
Okay, so Palace for James, Fulham for Dan, and we're going to conclude with another all-London affair on Saturday. It's a 3 o'clock kickoff between Tottenham and Brentford, and Spurs, I can tell you, are 13-10 to claim the win here. Brentford 2-1, and the draw 5-2. We'll let Dan talk in more detail about Tottenham, but we'll start with you first, James, in terms of Brentford, who continue to dumbfound the critics, I think, in terms of how they're performing. They gave it a good go against Arsenal in midweek, ended up losing more so because of a late goal to seal a 2-0 win for the Gunners. But what are the chances here?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you look at the records of both of these teams, and Brentford have got the second worst away record this season. So, on that aspect, you'd say, I don't fancy them. But then you look at Spurs, they've got the second worst home record. So where are you going with this one? I think it's very, very hard to predict a winner out of these two. You know, Thomas Frank have been thanking his lucky stars that they got the draw at Newcastle, really, although some would say warranted with the karma coming back with a penalty. But Brentford, I like Brentford actually with in terms of at the start of the season with everything that happened with Frank leaving, with pretty much the spine of the team leaving as well. And it was Keith Andrews coming in for his first managerial position. Everyone's going, they're gone. They're absolutely gone. Fair credit though, Andrews has done a fantastic job to get Brentford where they are at the moment this season. They're still not out of it in terms of they could get dragged into the relegation battle very, very easily. But you know, home form for them has been absolutely fantastic. But like I said, it's the away record. It's 1 win, 6 losses. They maybe haven't had that right balance as he tried to sit back too much. And then the next game away from home as he tried to be a bit more attacking or too attacking. You know, he needs to get that little balance right, I think, between. But he's got some really good players in his side. I'm leaning here towards the both teams to score because I think both defences are pretty poor. And I think both attacks, they've got options in there. And I just can't pick a winner out of these two. Like I said, with the home form of Spurs and the away form of Brentford, I can't really logically make any reasoning for those two. So both teams to score, I think, is the best one for me. Spurs have only failed to score in 2 of their home matches, and Brentford have netted in 7 of their 9 away fixtures in all comps.
I suppose, we should talk about, Dan, as well, the fact that this is Thomas Frank's first game against Brentford since leaving to join Spurs. There's not necessarily an abundance of players still there in the first team that were there under him, but there will be quite a few who might want to put one over on their former coach. But this looks like a significant game for Thomas Frank at Spurs.
Yeah, at the moment the run that Spurs have been on, they're all really big games, aren't they? Since everything seemed to be going sort of okay, even though the performances weren't wonderful, and then the defeat at Arsenal and the manner of it, I think, came as a bit. I know Arsenal away is a tough fixture, but the manner of that defeat just brought a bit of a reality check, and then they've shipped, the 5 goals against PSG, the disastrous loss to Fulham with the 2 early goals conceded. And I just think the Newcastle game, I agree with James. They were fortunate Spurs to get the point because for the majority of the game they were second best, and it was a hard watch as a Spurs fan to watch a lot of that game. But sometimes you just need to get a result at a tough place to turn something and get the fans back on side. You heard the Spurs fans towards the end of that game. They were right behind the team. They're on side again, and that makes a big difference when you're then going into a home game when often the fans haven't been totally behind you. So I think to get the result without Van der Ven as well, they obviously felt they had to rest Van der Ven, so they're going to have with Spurs. I always think if Romero and Van der Ven are together, and Danso actually had one of his better games in the week, but I think to get Romero and Van der Ven together is crucial for Spurs the way they play. And look, they don't look a free-flowing side. I think until they either get Simmons, to play well in the 10 or get Kulusevski fit, there's going to be an issue with creativity. But the price is big enough for me. Odds to get 13-10 Spurs. Brentford lost 6 out of 7 away from home. I totally respect what they've done there, and the manager's done. They've done certainly better than a lot of people expected. They've recruited really well, and I think they'll get away results as the season goes on because of the counter-attack threat they've got. But they've had a day less here to prepare to have to go to Arsenal on a Wednesday and go to Spurs on a Saturday. That's a tough ask. I just think Spurs' price is big enough. Spurs to win.
Well, that is the Premier League covered then for this week. Next up, it's your FPL update, and then we'll discuss all things EFL and FA Cup. Well, it's FPL time again, and Tom Hill joins us now for his suggestions as to who to have in your Fantasy League team this week.
It's been a manic few days in the FPL world with a quick turnaround for the midweek action, and the same happens again. Just hours after Manchester United's clash with West Ham, we've now got to turn our attention to game week 15. Before we get into our best 3 outfield players, here's a quick reminder. We all get 5 free transfers this week due to our squads being affected by AFCON, but that means you need to use all of them in this weekend to get the full allocated 5. But let's move on then and look at the best options for game week 15. Our defender recommendation is Malik Chow, priced at 5 million. The Newcastle defender has played 90 minutes in 9 consecutive matches now, and he should really be looking to push on. While some say he'll get rested, he's established himself as a key part of the Magpies' defence. Chow scored a whopping 16 points against Everton last weekend, and Newcastle have the joint highest chance of keeping a clean sheet according to the odds. Burnley have won 1 game away from home this season, and the Clarets have lost 5 in a row, failing to score in 3 of those ties. In midfield, we have stayed within the Newcastle dressing room, and captain Bruno Gomares is our man this week. He's available at £6.7 million. Eddie Howe handed his skipper a rest in midweek against Tottenham, but he came off the bench to score a fine goal and collect 7 points. That means he's now scored 39 points since game week 9, while he's got 51 points in 7 home appearances. He's got double-figure returns at home against Manchester City, Fulham and Nottingham Forest, and after a rest in midweek, he could do the same against the struggling Clarets. The fixture list this week really narrows down the forward picks, and it is once again a simple decision to stand by Manchester City's Erling Haaland, now priced at £14.9 million. It feels like the majority of active managers have got him in their teams, and he should be able to continue to reward us. He faces Sunderland this week, which is a tough test, but City are at home and are predicted to score the most goals this weekend. Haaland netted 14 points against Fulham after successive blanks, getting 1 goal and 2 assists. He also hit the post twice. With City getting the best out of Phil Foden and Jeremy Doku at present, Haaland should prosper even against the impressive Black Cats.
Well, a big thanks to Tom. And before we go through the best bets in terms of the Championship and the EFL and FA Cup this weekend, just a quick heads up that the Racing Post website will have a live blog on Friday's World Cup draw. Who will England and Scotland pull out? And of course, there's still the prospect of Wales, the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland getting through the playoffs and being at the World Cup as well. So the draw to look forward to is on Friday. We're going to go back to domestic matters though now and take a look firstly at the League One promotion race. Only a couple of games in League One this weekend due to the fact that there's FA Cup second round weekend. 5 points separate the top 7 teams at the moment. Cardiff lead the way, and they're on course, it would look like, for a first-time return to the Championship. But Dan, it's going to be an intriguing end to the season at the top of League One. It's going to be a fascinating promotion battle.
Definitely, and it might not even just be those top 7. I mean, there's 10 points separating the top 19, which is just it's absolutely bonkers how tight this division is. I think Cardiff, to already be top at the moment, considering they've got quite a young side. You've got sort of like Welsh internationals, young Welsh internationals like Capaccio, Lawler, Ruben Colwell, I think's picked an injury up at the moment, but they've got a lot of exciting young players that are only going to get better. It's just sort of learning to cope with like the physical side. I think often with Cardiff in League One, a lot of their football, especially at home when they've won 6 out of 8 games, is great. Away from home, when they've got to tough it out, they did that last away game away to Northampton. So that was a good step in the right direction for them. They're going to get stronger, but like any young team, you're going to have dips as well. So, but I certainly wouldn't put anyone off of back in Cardiff to finish top. Bolton, I think, would be a potential contender. They were struggling at the start of the season to turn draws into wins. They've started doing that now. Got more of an experienced squad, a deep squad, play some lovely football. And I think when they start, they've got a great home record, unbeaten at home, Bolton. If they start winning away, they're going to be an obvious threat. I mean, a team that could push up and threaten the playoffs, I would say Leyton Orient. They've started slow again, but they've got some real firepower. Ballard, Colony, I think, is the best attacker in the division, and they're starting to get results now. I think they could push up. They're already only 4 points outside the playoffs after a shocking start. I think they could easily finish in the top 6.
Two games, by the way, in League One on Saturday. Cardiff against Huddersfield looks a big game at the Cardiff City Stadium, and at home park it's Plymouth against Bradford. We're going to get Dan's best bets then for the weekend. Normally, of course, we'd have one from the Championship, one from League One and League Two, but it is FA Cup week as well. So we'll start off with Dan's best bet in the Championship before we get his other two. And who are we looking at in the second tier, Dan?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Derby at home to Leicester. I mean, the bookies are struggling to sort of split these. Derby 13-8 to win at home. I know Leicester have just come down from the Premier League, but we're 18 games in now. They're in 16th place. Leicester had a little mini revival and then put in a couple of real poor performances. Lost 3-0 at Southampton, 3-2 at home to Sheffield United, where they were 3-0 down at half time, and the crowd were. It was toxic there. I think that Cifuentes is under massive pressure there. It wouldn't surprise me if they lose this game if Leicester decide to act, especially in a Derby match as well. And Derby, they went to Middlesbrough last week. It was the first game under Kim Hellberg, so it's a tough fixture for them to go into. Took the lead, ended up losing 2-1 in a half-full game, but they've actually won 6 of their last 8 matches, Derby. John Eustace is doing a really good job there, and I think they'll have a strong season. And this game at home, at those odds, 13-8, I think Derby will get the win.
Saw Derby against Middlesbrough last week. They were unlucky to lose that game. They were in complete control for about an hour, and then a couple of disappointing goals to give away at the end. So Derby is the first selection for Dan this week. Who's pick number 2, Dan?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Bradford in the League One to win away to Plymouth. Only 2 League One games, as you mentioned, more. And Bradford I didn't mention in that League One promotion race, but they're right up there. They could go top this weekend. If they win, they'll certainly go into the top 2. They've had a few issues winning away from home, Bradford, but they only lost 1 away game. A lot of draws, but I think this is a wonderful opportunity for them. Plymouth second from bottom, having a real tough time under Tom Cleverley. Lost 5 of their last 6 league games. The guy that's been getting all the goals from Lauren Talai, he's scored their last 5 goals, Plymouth, including the winner in the EFL Trophy, the 1-0 win away to Leyton Orient. Leyton Orient played their reserves in that game, so it doesn't really say a great deal suddenly that Plymouth are a really good side. I think they're having a right struggle, and without their main striker, I think it's a great chance for Bradford to go and win there. Bradford to win.
So Bradford, the next selection, and I think we're looking at the FA Cup, down for pick number 3.
Yeah, 2 League One teams actually in the FA Cup. Going to go with Barnsley, drawn our better odds against to win away to Peterborough. Peterborough, they kind of had a new manager bounce under Luke Williams, won four in a row across all competitions. Since then, they've lost 3 in a row. They got knocked out by Swindon in the EFL Trophy in midweek, which would have been a blow because Peterborough had actually won that competition twice in a row. So it's a competition they like to do well in. And against the Barnsley side that are starting to improve. They had a terrible result in the EFL Trophy, made a few changes and lost 5-0 away to Port Vale. But in the league, they've been starting to improve. Got a good draw away from home last time out away to Stockport, where they'd led and probably should have won. A great 5-0 win at home to Luton. Their performances are picking up, and they're going to be, both teams will be full strength for the FA Cup, I would imagine. But I think Barnsley, odds against to win the game, considering they're quite a bit higher, in the league, 9 points higher, having played 2 games less, and their odds against to win the game. Barnsley for me.
Okay, that is Dan's 3 selections then for this week's action outside of the Premier League. We're going to go back to the top flight now because James has got a bet builder for the big clash of the week. And that big game is at Villa Park at 12:30 on Saturday. It's Aston Villa against league leaders Arsenal. And James, what's the first leg of the bet builder?
Yeah, the first of 3, so we're going for over 3.5 cards. Now, I think this will be quite a spicy fixture between these two. Obviously, if Villa win, they can close the gap to Arsenal, but there's been at least 4 cards in the last 9 meetings between these two. 6 of Villa's last 8 games have seen over 3.5 cautions, while the same can be said in 4 of Arsenal's last 6 as well. So cards is the start of this.
Okay, so cards over 3.5 is the first of the 3 legs. What's leg number 2, James?
Yeah, I'm going for an anytime goal scorer, and it's Daniel Marlon, the Villa forward, who's in great form at the moment. He scored in Wednesday's win at Brighton. It means he's now netted in 4 of his last 6 appearances for the club, and 6 of his 7 total goals have come at Villa Park. So he's banging form at the moment, going to a stadium that he's been enjoying.
And leg number 3, finally.
Yeah, it's Ricardo Calafiori to commit 1 or more fouls. Now, a reshuffled Arsenal defence has left them a little bit more exposed, and Calafiori has made at least one foul in 5 of his last 6 games. He was pulled at 5 times in the draw at Sunderland recently as well, so I think he can add to his tally on Saturday.
Okay, that's James's Premier League bet builder, which will pay out at around about 6-1 as prices are at the moment. We're going to move on now to the Assist Treble with a selection from each of us. And Dan, we'll start with your pick first for the treble.
Yeah, I'll go with Chelsea to win at Bournemouth. I think with Cole Palmer getting fit, Neto and Garnacho were left out the starting lineup at Leeds. So I would expect 2, possibly 3 of them to start. They got more options than Bournemouth, I thought they looked tired and short of confidence in that loss against Everton, where they only had 5 shots. Very un-Bournemouth-like. I think Chelsea will have too much.
Chelsea for Dan. Who are you backing here, James?
Yeah, it's Crystal Palace to win at Fulham. I just think Palace, with their fantastic away record this season, 13 points they've collected on the road, and their impressive record at Craven Cottage as well. They haven't lost there since 2005. Probably just got enough quality in their team, more than Fulham do, to get the win.
Okay, well, I'm going to go into League One, and I'm going with Cardiff at a decent price, I think, of 19-20 to beat Huddersfield. Brian Barry Murphy's men have gone back to the top of the table, as we mentioned earlier, after back-to-back wins, and they haven't lost at home in the league since the 30th of September. Last week's 3-3 home draw with Wimbledon, once again highlighting Huddersfield's vulnerability at the back. They've kept just 2 clean sheets in League One since August. And I think with Cardiff and home advantage and that early kick-off as well, it may well be too much for Huddersfield here. As I say, Cardiff, my selection, at around 19-20. So just to clarify, it's all the C's this week: Cardiff, Crystal Palace and Chelsea for the Assist Treble. And we're going to conclude this week's show with the naps of the week from James and Dan. And Dan, we'll start with your nap first.
Yeah, going to go with a B. I'm going to go with Bradford to win away to Plymouth. Having a really strong season after being promoted from League Two, been in the top 6 since the middle of August. Plymouth, they were 2 divisions higher than Bradford last season, but they're having a bit of a nightmare. Struggle with recruitment. One of the best signings, Lauren Talai, as I said, he's out suspended. So it's a big blow for them, Bradford, to win.
Okay, Bradford for Dan. Who's your nap, James?
Well, I'm going for a U, and that's for under 2.5 goals, but that's Everton against Nottingham Forest. I just think it'll be quite an attritional watch between these 2 teams who are favouring defence over attack. Everton's issues with a striker or strikers that aren't scoring goals, and Tieno Barry and Beto, and I just think this could be quite limited with the chances we get to score goals, so under 2.5.
Like a mixture of the assist and countdown this week on this week's show. Big thanks to both James and Dan for their input. Another cracking week to look ahead to, of course, of football action. Don't forget to like, subscribe and comment on the Racing Post YouTube channel. The Assist will be back again next week. We'll also have the Euro Assist for you on Monday to look ahead to the Champions League. But in the meantime, enjoy your weekend football and please remember to gamble responsibly.